well known for her academic excellence. She is a gold medalist in her degree. Her area of specialization includes feminist writings, eco-criticism, comparative literature, and Canadian literature. She is the author of two popular books, Women's Quest for New Self and Identity and Eco-Feminist Perspective by Margaret Atwood. 12 of her scholars were awarded PhD degree. We are really fortunate to have such a great scholar as an examiner for the Viva Voce. On behalf of all board members present here, ma'am, I extend a very warm welcome to you. I'm extremely glad to welcome Voce, Dr. Vasuhi, Assistant Professor of English, Department of English, Manonmaniyam Sundara University. We are really delighted to have you as our observer, ma'am, for the Viva Voce. Dr. Vasuhi is a great author who has written more than 6 books. She has done a postdoctoral award in the year 2016. Moreover, she is a guest speaker for many national and international conferences all over India. On behalf of everyone present here, I welcome you, ma'am, to the Viva Voce. I'm also happy to welcome the dynamic principal of St. John's College, Dr. John Kennedy, which is functioning under the Thesis of CSI Tirunelveli. He's working hard towards connecting young minds to strive towards success and achievement. He is known for his wonderful administration. He's also a great orator, both in Tamil and in English. We are extremely grateful to you, sir, for accepting our invitation despite your very busy schedule. Thank you, sir. On behalf of everyone here, I thank you, sir. Also received the best principal award twice in the year 2019 and 2021. I am very glad to welcome Dr. Sundara. Actually, doesn't need a introduction at all, as he a well-recognized and most sought professor in Tirunelveli renders services to students, scholars, and staff of all colleges affiliated to Manonmaniyam University and Manonmaniyam University as well. At this juncture, I would also like to welcome my scholar, Shophet, Benedsingh, and also the parents of Dr. Mr. Shophet, Benedsingh. Parents are the world for children, not overlooked. But we are here joined by the wonderful parents of my scholar, Mr. Shophet, Reverend Dr. P. and Reverend Mrs. Jeya, who have raised one of the best citizens of the country, with immense admiration and affection. I welcome you both to the Viva Voce examination. I'm sure your prayers and blessings have helped Mr. Shophet to complete his thesis. It is really a great pleasure and honor to welcome faculty members of leading colleges of Manonmaniyam University. I'm extremely happy to see faculty members of St. John's College. I also see many retired professors of St. John's College, of St. College, St. College, St. Jeya's College, Government College, Sundara College, and various colleges affiliated both Manonmaniyam University and other universities of Tamil Nadu. I'm sure I feel proud and extremely overwhelmed to see scholars from reputed institutions institutions of Monomanium Sundara University. I'm sure your presence here today, your presence here, Viva Voce, and a special one. I'm sure you will be enriched with knowledge after the completion of the Viva Voce. I welcome you all to the Viva Voce of Mr. Shophet, Peter Benedsingh. I'm very happy to welcome him. He's a great asset to the students of St. John's College. He is known for his excellent teaching, research, and innovation. He is very sincere, dedicated, and committed scholar. I welcome you, Shophet. Shophet Peter Benedsing's title of the thesis is Rethinking Absurdism, the Megacosm of the simulated absurd life in Auster and Mitch Albom's select fiction. The research has undertaken an effort to evaluate the nature of absurdism in the contemporary literature. The phenomena of the absurd has been experimented in the works of the two living American novelists, Paul Auster and Mitch Albom's select fiction, whose works are the international bestsellers. At this juncture, before Shophet presents his thesis, I request the principal of St. John's College to give his wishes. Over to John Kennedy, sir.
Yeah, I'm so happy that I am asked to speak. Good evening to each and every one of you. I greet you in the name of our Lord. I'm so happy to participate in the Viva Voce program of Shophet Peter, one of our lecturers, one of our assistant professors of our college. We are so happy whenever we have this kind of Viva Voce in our college campus. Why? Because as most of us know, that St. John's College, which was established in the year 1878, it's 144 years of experience in higher education. And by the grace of God, we are going to face the NAC Accreditation Commission the forthcoming month, January 10th and 11th. For that, we are making a lot of arrangements. I'm so happy the English department of St. John's College takes a greater part in it. And there, Mr. Shophet Peter takes a very important role maintaining the library of St. John's College. In this juncture, I'm so happy to already welcome by the convener of this program. On behalf of St. John's College, we would like to extend our warm welcome and greeting and thanks to Dr. Swarnalatha Joseph Madam, Principal retired. Even though she's retired, she's very active doing the research activities work. On behalf of St. John's College, we would like to thank and welcome you, Madam. And also, we'd like to thank and welcome the examiner of this program, Dr. K. Reshmi, Associate Professor of English, Pondicherry University, Pondicherry. And also, we would like to welcome and thank the observer of this program, Dr. Vasuhi, Assistant Professor of English, MS University. And also, we welcome the Vice Principal of our college, Dr. Sundara, who is the Research Department Head and also the Vice Principal of our college. And he has produced a lot of more number of PhD scholars, and he's an asset to this institution. We are focusing during this NAC visit, Dr. Jeya Sundara. And also, I would like to extend my warm greetings and welcome to our beloved Pastor Chairman, Reverend Frederick, and also Mrs. Frederick. And in this occasion, I wish Mr. Shophet Peter all the best. And I'm sure that he will do his presentation very well. Once again, on behalf of St. John's College, I wish Shophet all the best. God bless you, Shophet.
Thank you, sir.
Guidance. Your college will fare very well in NAC accreditation. All the best, sir. Thank you very much for joining us. Now I hand over the session to Mr. Shophet Peter Benedsingh for presentation and evaluation.
Good evening, everyone. Finally, the day has come. The day that I have been waiting for more than 25 years. Today I remember the day when my father and mother dragged me to school, and I cherish that moment. But I had a very harsh education. I studied up to 12th in 13 schools. Can you believe it? I studied up to 12th standard in 13 schools. I think I should go for Guinness record. But today I stand on the pinnacle day of my education. I thank my parents for all the things that they have done in my life. I welcome them. I welcome my parents. I honor my parents and honor their presence here. My father, Reverend Dr. P. Frederick Satya Samuel, and also I honor my mother, Reverend Mrs. Jeya Frederick, who has been a backbone in my life, and they have rendered my ways, and today I stand before them. I want to say a few words to my father and mother. Father and my mother, you have sown for many years, and today you are reaping the things that you have seen. Kindly mute the audio, please. Thank you. Today also I take the moment to honor my father-in-law who just passed away. I remember him. He wanted to see this day, but he was not here with us. And also I honor my mother-in-law who is a strong pillar of my family. Ladies and gentlemen, I have spent around 33,71,040 minutes from the day of my registration to this day. And among these minutes, I have taken around 10,23,820 minutes in writing and in reading my thesis. And just here, I'm here to present only everything in just 35 minutes. Can I call this thing as absurd? Ladies and gentlemen, I have read around 8,62,500 words. And I have converted everything into 73,337 words in my thesis. You know for what? Just to change one word from M to D. You didn't get it, do you? From Mr. to Doctor. Can I call this as absurd? Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome everyone to this PhD presentation. I welcome my guide, I welcome my co-guide, I welcome my examiner, my convener, and my student friends, and my professors, my colleagues, my teachers. I welcome everyone who are gathered here, who have accepted my invitation, and who are present here to listen to this presentation. I also welcome my student friends who are gathered here to witness the things that is going on before them. This is my thesis. I have written my thesis in around 238 pages. This is my complete thesis. And I have followed MLA 8th edition methodology. And by this presentation, I would be doing injustice to my thesis, because the real finding of my thesis can be understood only when you take my thesis and read it word by word. So by this presentation, I will be really doing injustice to my thesis. Everyone who is using mobile phone, take it in the landscape mode so that you could follow the presentation. Thank you. This is the title of my thesis. The title of my thesis is Rethinking Absurdism, the Megacosm of the Simulated Absurd Life in Paul Auster and Mitch Albom's Select Fiction. I read it once again. Rethinking Absurdism. Absurdism is a theory. I have given a rethought to absurdism. The megacosm, mega is big, cosm is cosmos. The big cosmos are the huge one of the simulated absurd life. Simulated absurd life is the coinage of this research in two authors, Paul Auster and Mitch Albom's Select Fiction. I have divided my thesis in 5 chapters, and the first chapter is Introduction. I have initiated my thesis with the research question. I have asked the research question, what is the meaning of life? The question of the meaning of life frames the basic theoretical question of my thesis. Everyone can answer this question. This question can be answered theoretically or metaphysically or theologically and whatever you name it. Everyone who have gathered here will answer this question. But I chose to answer this question literally, or I turned to the pages of literature to answer this question. To answer this question, many philosophers have given enlightenment on the meaning of the question of the meaning of life. Early philosopher Aristotle has said that eudaimonia is the meaning of life, which is happiness. Happiness is the ultimatum of life. He says that happiness is a happy person is the one who lives well and acts well. He concentrates mostly on the virtue of a person. If a person has a virtue, that means he is someone who has the meaning of life. There lies another tradition called hedonia. The tradition hedonia concentrates on pleasure. Pleasure is the meaning of life. So happiness and pleasure forms the basic principles of life. There came another man named Thomas Aquinas. He said that happiness is the ultimatum, but it does not stem from virtue, or it does not stems from pleasure, but it stems from another thing called beatific vision. He concentrates on God and says that God is the source of happiness. Happiness is the ultimatum. Since it is the ultimatum, a thing always induces something, a crave. If there is a crave, then that is not the end point. So he says that the ultimate end is God, so that one person can find his complete happiness. This ideology is completely omitted, and it has been put into sideline because it always omits the logical reasoning. So during the generations after generation, time has passed and many people have come, and so does the meaning of life. The meaning of life got great alteration when it encounters time. There came a moment when in 20th century people started to question the question of meaning of life. People said that it is a pseudo question. They said that there is no meaning in life, therefore life is meaningless. The very question, the question of the meaning of life is omitted because there is no such thing as life, says Terry Eagleton. So the question of meaning of life is questioned, therefore they came to an abrupt conclusion that life is meaningless. Life is absolutely meaningless. There came versions like all things are born for no reason, continue through weakness and die by accident. Man is a useless passion. It is meaningless that you are born and it is meaningless that you die. And this voice became a noise, and it went on, and it had a booming effect on the world. During the World War period, it was having a wonderful effect. Albert Camus also believes that this is the urgent question. This is the basic of all the question, and this question has to be answered. What is the meaning of life? That question has to be answered. And he gives a basic, abrupt, straightforward answer. So one asked the question to Albert Camus, what is the meaning of life? He said, there is no meaning, therefore everyone go and commit suicide. This is the birthplace of absurdism. Absurdism begins with this answer. You would have heard the term absurd in your life before. This is the image that you would remember whenever you see or hear the word absurd. This is Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot. Absurd is a term that has been coined by or been propagated by the man named Martin Esslin in his work called The Theatre of the Absurd. It was published in the year 1691, where he grouped certain dramatists who had the same predicament over life. And he declares what is absurd. The dictionary normal meaning of the word absurd is out of harmony, illogical, unreasonable, incongruous, out of harmony. So this is the basic meaning of the word called absurd. But the concept absurd differs from the word absurd. What is the concept called absurd? Absurd is something that is devoid of purpose when a person is completely uprooted from his religious and metaphysical and transcendental roots. Man is lost, man is absurd. So whenever a person is completely rooted from his hope, rooted from his God, rooted from his philosophy, he is absurd. So the concept absurd was manifested, or it was revealed to the world by Martin Esslin, and he says that the drama genre is the one that perfectly holds the ideology of absurd. But there came another terminology called absurdism, and absurdism believes that novel is the basic formula or the genre which holds absurdism. And the propaganda for absurdism is Albert Camus. He has propagated his philosophy in his novel called Myth of Sisyphus, and in this book, The Myth of Sisyphus, forms the basic theoretical framework for my thesis. So Albert Camus answered this question, there is no meaning in life, therefore everyone go and commit suicide. He rejects this question answer because it eliminates man from the problem. And by rejecting this immediate question, he goes on to create his ideology of absurd. What is absurd in absurdism? Absurd is the confrontation between man and the world. It's the confrontation between you and your need. It is the confrontation between your desire and its provision. You want to pass net and it is not happening. You want to get married and it is not happening. So that fight, that confrontation is called absurd. So you want to have reason, want to find reason for your existence, and you are not able to find it. The researcher calls this absurd in his thesis as absurd ambience. And Albert Camus says that the initiation point or the beginning point of the absurd, he says that it begins in a moment. And he says, what is that moment? He answers that when the person asks a question why. The moment you ask a question why, it begins. So one day when you ask question, it initiates in your life. The researcher calls this word as absurd feeling, and it is the activator or the initiator of the absurd. So the nature is absurd, the world is absurd, the position that you are here is absurd. But that is not important. According to Albert Camus, the response that you give to absurd is very, very, very important. So what is the response that you can give to absurd? You can give two responses to absurd. One, you can commit suicide, or you can recover from it. Suicide, he rejected it. He also rejected another form of suicide, which he calls as philosophical suicide. What is philosophical suicide? Philosophical suicide is having hope that someday your confrontation will be okay, that someday you will get a job, someday you will get married. That hope, he calls it as philosophical suicide. And faith also comes under it. Or if you call on God that you will be okay one day, you have committed philosophical suicide. Or belief in the afterlife or heaven. He called all these as escape routes and completely rejects it from his ideology. And again, after rejecting everything, he goes on to recover. Kindly please mute your audio because it is disturbing the presentation. Thank you. So he goes on to recover, he goes on to give his recovery, which is, he gives a beautiful answer. To have life, living is keeping the absurd alive. So if you want to live, you have to keep the confrontation alive. You have to, if you lose the confrontation, you lose your life. So keeping the confrontation is the meaning of life. I think many of you here have just lost the meaning of life, because you have lost the confrontation. So he says life is in the absurd. The meaning of life is in the absurd, keeping the confrontation, living in the confrontation without even believing that you will one day come out of it. So he calls it as life in the absurd. I have mentioned this thing as life in the absurd in my thesis. Albert Camus then gives ways to hold this absurd way of life. He gives 3 capsules: absurd revolt, absurd freedom, and absurd passion. Absurd revolt is having fight, maintaining the fight, and freedom is that you do not believe that someday you will be alright, and also living in this world with passion. He calls these things as consequence of the absurd. I have mentioned it, and I have dictated it as these 3 ideologies as consequence of the absurd. So life is in the absurd, that is, you have to keep the consequence of the absurd, and you have to live in the absurd. Albert Camus is very happy that by the sheer act of consciousness, he has transformed the invitation to death into a rule of life. To propagate more on the ideology of absurd, he calls on the Sisyphus to improve his ideology of absurdism. Sisyphus is an eternal character in eternal punishment who is pulling the rocks to the top of the mountain only to see it to come down. So this cycle continues, and this is the punishment, and this goes on forever. He takes this characteristic from Sisyphus' punishment and puts it into the consequence of the absurd and says that the consequence of the absurd goes on forever. It is not one-time event, it is a lifetime event. That means this consequence of the absurd must be carried from one experience to another experience to another experience, and you have to keep it forever. You should not have hope and escape it. You should keep the confrontation and live inside it. I call this as the absurd recurrence in my thesis. That is the moving the consequence of that from one experience to another and to the another, and staying in the absurd. So quantity is more important rather than the quality. Albert Camus says that you have to keep this absurd till your death. So when the moment it starts, you have to keep it till your death, and I have called it at ultimatum. You have to keep it till your death. So from Myth of Sisyphus, I have expounded absurd ambience, the initiation, and the absurd feeling, the starting point, and you have to choose the life in the absurd, and you have to maintain it by absurd recurrence and live in it till your death. This is the complete formula of absurdism. And absurdism, after explaining Myth of Sisyphus, I have explained The Outsider, the novel. Remember, he has chosen novel, not a drama. After explaining his theoretical framework, he has put it into a novel and have explained it. I have beautifully explained everything in my introductory chapter. And after explaining everything about absurd, I have made myself to find absurdism in contemporary characters. For this reason, to check the status of absurdism in the contemporary characters. For this reason, I have chosen Mitch Albom, American bestseller, and also another author, Paul Auster. Though these authors are continents apart in their writing, they have some striking similarities. They are found to be living in the same place, New Jersey, and also they are found to be Jews. So they have some striking similarities. I want to mention a point here. My guide and my co-guide share same birthdays. They were both born on July 24, and this is not an accident, it is a divine appointment. Okay, so, and I have taken 4 novels from Mitch Albom: The Timekeeper, Have a Little Faith, The First Phone Call from Heaven, The 5 People You Meet in Heaven, and I have taken 3 novels from Paul Auster: City of Glass, Moon Palace, and Music of Chance. And I have taken 3 works for my theoretical framework: Myth of Sisyphus, Stranger, and Simulacra and Simulation by Jean Baudrillard. So enlightening on my title, Rethinking Absurdism, I have given a rethought to absurdism, or checked the status of absurdism, and I have marked the differences and the similarities, and I have evaluated about it, the megacosm of the simulated absurd life in Paul Auster and Mitch Albom's select fiction. And this thesis follows an inimitable sampling methodology, which is the findings of a chapter. Findings of the chapter is the starting point of the next chapter. Otherwise, the second chapter is completely dependent on the previous chapter, and the third chapter is completely dependent on the second chapter, and fourth chapter is completely dependent on the third chapter, and the findings of the third chapter formulates the fourth chapter, and so it is a continuous sequence. So if you want to read my thesis, you have to go from page 1 to page 238. Otherwise, it would be bizarre and absurd to read my thesis. And second chapter, I have titled it as Absurd and Shifting Ideologue, the Absurd Heroes' Resonance. What I have done in this thesis is, in this chapter is, I have taken 3 characters: Door from Timekeeper, Fog from Music of Chance, and Nash from Moon Palace, and I have kept them under Albert Camus, and I have analyzed them, and I have marked the differences and the similarities. The features of absurdism in these characters are systematically experimented, and the behavior pattern, and I have uprised. So at first I have to check the absurd ambience in these 3 characters, because without absurd ambience, the research will come to a halt, and the research has to be cancelled at the moment, because absurd ambience is the beginning point. The confrontation is necessary so that I could pursue my research. So I have tried to find this absurd ambience in these 3 characters. I have found out in Door, and I have completely analyzed it, and I have said that he is in absurd ambience because he was found in the cave trying to hear the noise, and he was living in the confrontation. And the second character, Fog, I have found that he is absolutely living in absurd ambience, and so the absurd ambience was approved to Fog, so that I could make research on this character. The next character, Nash, his father abandoned him, his wife died in cancer after taking all the money, and his wife walked away. His daughter was given to some other girl, his sister, and he lost everything. He was absolutely living in the confrontation. After everything happened, he got a large sum of money, $2 lakh. He says that not even the money could not stop the things that has already happened. So the perfect absurd ambience is placed in this character. After absurd ambience, so absurd ambience is there in these 3 characters, so that I could move on to the next feature. The next feature is the starting point, the absurd feeling. Because absurd feeling, he says, the moment he asks a question why, it initiates. It is the activator of the absurd. After that, the character has to choose life in the absurd. If the character doesn't choose life in the absurd, then I cannot do my research. So I have, and the life in the absurd is, they should not choose suicide, they should not choose philosophical suicide, they have to live in it. I have tried to find absurd feeling in the characters, but I was not able to find absurd feeling, but they have directly moved to life in the absurd. Door perfectly exhibits the nature or the paradigm that has been given by Albert Camus, which is inside the life in the absurd, and he maintained it for 6,000 years constantly without moving away from life in the absurd. And I tried to analyze it in the Fog also, and he was also not having absurd feeling, but he also directly moved to life in the absurd. He was extracting happiness from absurd. So from the confrontation, from the absurd ambience, there was no absurd ambience, there was no absurd feeling. And in Nash's character also, there was no absurd feeling, and he also moved to life in the absurd. After getting all the money, he resigned his job, he sold his apartment, and he moved away from the apartment, threw away everything, and he took his car and started to drive. Absurd freedom. He was having absurd freedom. He was responding to his absurd by absurd freedom, and he was maintaining or living in the car, driving all through the country for continuously for 1 year. He says beautifully, it is the explosion that triggers the birth of the new world. So the absurd feeling was not there, life in the absurd was there. I believe, and I record in my thesis, that these contemporary characters are a little bit mature. They directly move on to life in the absurd without giving a thought that they are in the absurd. So after that, this character has to be shifted. The absurd recurrence must be there. Absurd recurrence is the consequence of that must move from one character to another. So they have to continue this character till the end. So I have checked whether absurd recurrence is there after moving on for 1 year, and Nash was given an opportunity to transfer the absurd to the next character. One day he was driving in the road, and suddenly he saw a man half beaten, and he stopped the car. He has to move on to the next character. He finds that man, and that man came into his car, and half beaten guy is sitting near him, and this guy is a poker player, and someone has robbed all his money, and now he was blabbering that he has to play a game tomorrow and he has no money to play it. Therefore, he is asking for money. Suddenly, Nash moves to the next character. He asks, how much money you want? He says, I need $10,000. Suddenly, Nash becomes a sponsor. So, he beautifully shifted to the next experience and to the next experience. So, next day, they go on to play against 2 billionaires flour and stone. He plays $10,000. He lost immediately, and he plays the final amount, $2,300. He lost those amount also. So moving from one experience to another frequently, and Nash can be called as the absurd hero. And after that, he was not at all despised. He placed his car and he lost his car. Again, he took his car so that he could walk back home. Again, he lost his car, and suddenly he was in $10,000 debt. He moved from one experience to another, and absurd recurrence was there. Now the final thing has to be found out, which is the ultimatum. The ultimatum, that is this absurd recurrence must be fixed till the death. So I have tried to analyze this thing in the character Nash. So after $10,000, they have to pay the debt, the flour and stone. They have taken some stones, and they asked Nash and Voce to build the stone, and Merckx was appointed as the manager. So while they were building the stone, it was like Sisyphus who was pulling the stones up, but he was an eternal character and this guy is a mortal character. Exactly the similarities were the same, and they were building the wall, and when one day something happened. One day at night, Voce was really agitated, so he dug a hole and he went out of the wall. Now, and a call from escape is there. Nash is inside, a hole is before them, and no one would be there. He could just escape and go off from this absurd life. But he beautifully calls, "Come with me, don't be a jerk, come with me now." And Nash answers, "I promised myself that I would see it to the end. I am not asking you to understand it. I am not just going to run away." Nash is really an absurd hero. So he stays in the life in the absurd. He does not choose suicide or philosophical suicide. He perfectly stays in the life in the absurd, and he continues on. And a day came when, the final day came when the wall was completed, and it was his birthday, and it was also the freedom day. So Merckx asked him to go for a drink. So they went for a drink, and when they come back, when they return, Nash asked that he want to drive his own car, which he was driving 1 year before. So he took the car, he was sitting in the car, he was having the absurd freedom that he enjoyed before 1 year. He was pushing the accelerator and he was moving forward and forward and forward. Suddenly he saw a car before him. He has to apply the brake, but the absurd freedom has forced him to push the accelerator, and he straight away hit the car, and the novel ends there. Now I have to ask the question, has the absurd hero escaped? Absolutely not, because the absurd hero was given a chance to escape at night. He didn't choose it, but he's an absurd hero. So what I have seen is ambience was there, feelings were not there, life in the absurd was there, absurd recurrence was there, but they did not end up in ultimatum. This was the conflict that I found in these characters. He did not stay in the consequence of the absurd, and also not in the ultimatum. So I created a hypothesis. When the consequent of the absurd moves from one experience to another, the transition fastens or arguments and reaches a threshold velocity which cuts itself off into new realm in the absurd realm where the force of the consequence is neutralized. I have found a new realm, new place inside absurd recurrence or inside the absurd, and I have named it as hidden new level. I want to find this level because I have found new level in the absurd. Albert Camus says that absurd recurrence must be continued till the death, but I have found another space inside absurd. So this place is inside the absurd, absolutely, but it is between absurd recurrence and escape and also ultimatum, but in this place the consequence absurd was not there. The old school says that Albert Camus says that it continuously moved from ultimatum, but the research finds out that there is some other thing inside that level which is not yet been unearthed, and this thesis unearths this new level that is inside the absurd. And I tried to find out in the other characters also, analyze these things in the another characters. Due to want of time, I move on. Fogg also found out that he was also living in the next level, hidden new level. And I have also searched this thing in the next character, Dar. And also in Dar, he was also found out to be living in the finding out the hidden new level. So absurd recurrence, they have moved on to hidden new level. They have not moved on to escape. I move on to chapter 3. I have named it as neo-absurd. From material to the mystical. Neo means new absurd. So new absurd is, I found out in the 3rd chapter. From material from material to the mystical. So in this chapter I have taken efforts to find out this hidden new level. I have found the conflict, but I was not able to find out the result. I was searching for books. I was going around theories. I was not able to find out the answer, and I came to a point that I want to abandon my thesis. It is a failure, and I want to throw away everything that I have read and everything that I have read and I have written. But a day came, which I call it as an eureka moment. I had a eureka moment when my eyes fell upon Jean Baudrillard's Simulacra and Simulation. He makes some startling statements. He says that nothing is real and everything is simulacrum. He says that what I am, I do not know. I am the hologram, or I am the simulacrum of myself. He makes some startling statements in this work. And the Simulacra and Simulation begins with a Borges fairy tale. And in this fairy tale, this is the full structure of the empire. And the cartographers drew a map exactly to the size of an empire. So this one is real and this one is copy. So a real and a copy is made. Jean Baudrillard says that the real is no longer the higher realm of the map, or the map is no longer the lower realm of the map. It is not the copy. The copy is no longer the double, is not even reflecting the original, and also the real is no longer the real, it is something else. He says that the both will lose their identity. So what he really is saying is the demarcation between the real and copy goes off, and both loses that identity and they become one, and which he calls this as hyper real. That is science of the real for real. What I am trying to say is, whenever a real is substituted by the representation of the real, the copy has to perfectly explicate the real. But what he says is that copy will move on to the next level and it will no longer reflect the real. It will have the science of itself, science of our original science of itself. There is no distinction between concept of real. There is no distinction between true and false. No more imaginary, no more original and clone. And he says like this. And this process is called simulation, and the final product that it reaches is called simulacrum. So Jean Baudrillard says that whenever real is represented by the real, it reaches simulacrum in 4 stages. At first stage, it perfectly replicates the original, perfectly explicates the original identity, and then it becomes denatures the reality, absence of reality, it takes wings and flies off. The first level he calls it at first phase, second phase, third phase, and fourth phase. He also groups it as sacramental order, the bad order, and also protection, and also simulation. He groups it as 1 and also the other 3 phases as 2. So first order and second order, third order, simulacra. So applying Jean Baudrillard's words into Albert Camus' ideology, what Albert Camus has done is, he says that life is in the absurd. What he has done is, he He has represented the real. Absurd reality is a representation of the real. So he has substituted the science of the real with absurd reality. And Albert Camus says that you have to live in the life in the absurd, you have to stay here, and you have to live forever. But Jean Baudrillard, according to Jean Baudrillard, it is said that this is the first stage. Albert Camus says that the first stage goes on forever till ultimatum. But Jean Baudrillard says it is the first stage, and this first stage is the a good appearance takes a good appearance in the first stage, and in the second stage it takes a bad appearance and it flies off and ends into the fourth stage, where there is no real, which is absolutely hyper real. There is no science of the real. There will be science of the real for the real, and it will be simulacrum. I have found the answer, and that answer I have termed it as simulated absurd. So the hidden new level gets a new name in the third chapter. I have called it as simulated absurd. I have fought to name this absurd. If the elite community which is here, if you want to give a better name than you are so much welcome. I can also call this place as transfigured absurd, or alchemized absurd, or the hologram, or the quantum matrix, or absurd simulacra. I tried so many names. Finally, I sticked on to simulated absurd. I have found a new realm inside the absurd, which is simulated absurd. The realm is called simulated absurd. The life that a person lives here is called a simulated absurd life. So I have defined simulated absurd. When the consequent of the absurd transfers from one experience to another, it gains momentum and reaches the stage when the simulation process sets into action and starts its own simulacrum, where it has no connection with the reality. So I have found the answer and have taken the other three characters and I have rewritten the findings. So he has entered into simulated absurd, fog has entered into simulated absurd, dark has entered into simulated absurd. And after finding out this new realm, I have set my heart to find out the boundaries and the features of the simulated absurd. And again I pondered upon Jean Baudrillard's words, and Jean Baudrillard says that Disneyland is the perfect explication of hyperreal. In Disneyland, Disneyland is a place which is filled with illusions and phantoms. When a person goes into Disney and comes out of the Disneyland into the real world, the outer real world is no longer real, it is hyper-real, because the Disneyland has substituted the science of the real world to another world, which is illusionary world, which is a hyper-real world. So I have taken this word and I have substituted and tried to find out in the other two novels without taking the words for granted. I wanted to prove these words, so I have taken two other novels from Paul Auster's Daniel Quinn and Mitch Albom's Sully. And in the other three characters, the entering into the simulated absurd itself becomes the study, and in these two characters, finding out the boundaries and other features became the study. Daniel Quinn also, we have to also follow the same paradigms that has been given to all the other characters. I have followed everything, and I have found out that he was living in the absurd, and this guy is a simulator because he was living in the absurd, living in solitude, living in his apartment. He never came out of his house for 5 years, but he was publishing everything under the pseudonym William Wilson. So he was simulating his character. So I tried to study simulation through Daniel Quinn, and because of want of time, I moved forward and tried to find out through Daniel Quinn's character that this simulated absurd realm has another peculiar character, which is multiple fusion of real and imaginary. Through Daniel Quinn's character, I came to understand that real and imaginary collides together more rapidly, more frequently than a person can imagine. It is not just a one-time connection. The real and imaginary, the original and the clone, the true and the false just have rapid fusion, rapid energy is the output, and rapid transfer were there, and the real and copy became one. So therefore it skips logical interpretation, because whenever a real and copy mingles together, you cannot identify which one it is. Here Jean Baudrillard beautifully explains this ideology. Whenever a person is duplicating or faking fever, he will not have any symptoms. But when a person simulates a fever, he will have symptoms. So a person cannot identify who a real person is, a hyper-real person is. So it skips the logical interpretation. So the simulated absurd realm, I found out that It was there. Now I set out my heart to find out the boundary of the simulated absurd. Because in absurd, the boundary is ultimatum. Here I wanted to find out the boundary of the absurd. Because it is skipping the logical interpretation. It is going beyond my ability to comprehend. It is going beyond my ability to understand. So it is going beyond the level. So I tried to find out what is the boundary. Again, I did not give any personal interference in it. I went back to Daniel Quinn and I tried to understand how his life ended. The life that he ended was beautiful. He disappeared. He disappeared from the scene. So it started from absurd recurrence and ends in disappearance. So to add a word over disappearance to my position, that point looks a vanishing point. That end point looks like something like it disappeared, like it was vanished, because it skips my logical interpretation. So this finding has to question the another reality, which is the ultimatum. Albert Camus says that ultimatum is the end point, but here the finding says that disappearance is something the end point. So that lies a conflict. So I wanted to find out whether disappearance continues to ultimatum, which is death. Death is the ultimatum, as I have already explained. Again, I went back to Jean Baudrillard's word, and this is the real book written by Richard G. Smith, and this guy has combined all the uncollected interviews and have titled it as Hyperreality to Disappearance. So I was very enthused by the title. I moved on to write it, and he gave a startling statement in this book, in this work. He says disappearance reaches the highest place than the biological death. I was taken aback when I read this, and I wanted to prove it. Again, I went back to my author and I wanted to find out. So now the real fight is between simulation and death, whether simulation is higher than death or death is higher than simulation. So the fight begins. I went back to the book called The First Phone Call from Heaven. The title itself says that it is going to be something freaky. Sully is the protagonist. It is the place where you can find a war between simulation and death. I urge the readers to buy this book and read it. You will have a wonderful time. So Sullivan Harding, the novel starts. Giselle dies, and he has a son called Julius, and he was living in a place called Coldwater, where many people were getting mysterious phone call from heaven. Their cousins were calling every Friday. Today is also Friday, and every 1 p.m. they used to call, and it becomes a very popular thing. And the television people, the media came to record this event. They wanted to find out whether they're really getting the phone call from heaven, because they were saying it out loud that they were getting phone calls from heaven. This is the television and the media. Jean Baudrillard says they are powerful simulators. He says in a beautiful sentence that you no longer watch TV, it is TV that is watching you. That is you are not watching me, I am watching you. I am not inside your house, you are inside my house. So I am watching you. So he says about media and technology. He gives that media and technology are powerful simulators. Julius one day took a plastic phone and went to his father and said, when my mummy will call. So this word has initiated Sully, and he wanted to end this thing. And also the other people, media people also wanted to end this hoax. And so they took a day, which is December 22, Friday at 1 p.m. where they will get a call. And on that day, everyone will be there. The media will be having the camera, and they will propagate to the world that the phone call is coming from heaven. And Sully wanted to find out what is going on behind it, and he wanted to find out the reason. And on December 22 came, after long struggle, he found out that Horace was behind everything. He entered into Horace's room. There was so many technology, there was so many projectors behind him, and on the other side everyone was in the auditorium. They were waiting to get the phone call from heaven. And Horace was typing hello sister from his room, and they were getting a phone call, and that Diana was getting the call hello sister. And Horace was furious that this has happened, but the audience was so happy that they were getting the phone call from heaven. Sully was very furious, and he destroyed everything, every cards, and he destroyed everything. And after that, Horace says it is useless because the answer is done and everything has happened. The simulator has already passed on and everyone was celebrating. But he was furious and he destroyed everything. And he happily goes back to his house, and suddenly he gets a call. His wife was calling him, Sully, and he was furious and was saying that, Horace, I am going to kill you. But though he wants to kill Horace, he wants to hear his wife's words again. But so he tried to find out, because he tested every simulating technology, he tested everything. So he called someone and asked what happened to Horace. Horace died at 6:52, but the phone call, he checked his phone call and he found out the phone call came at 7:44. This is the first phone call from heaven. This cannot be completely omitted. This cannot be taken for granted and completely omitted, because it cannot be called as imaginary and illogical, because simulation creates science for the real, science of the real for the real. Simulated absurd bridges the natural and the supernatural. So the fight is answered. Simulation has won death, and this new world, simulated absurd, has the capacity to engulf death and go beyond ultimatum called as death. I concluded this in this third chapter. So disappearance has the phenomenon to overcome death, and ultimatum was engulfed in simulated absurd. And with these findings, I moved on to my fourth chapter. I titled my fourth chapter as Absurd Continuum, then Leap Beyond. Albert Camus says that a person have to live in the absurd. He should not choose suicide and philosophical suicide, but have to choose the recovery, which is life in the absurd. And he has rejected the philosophical suicide and he have taken it out of the context. But the simulated absurd has already taken death into its account. So the researcher feels that philosophical suicide also must be inside simulated absurd. Again, I did not come to the conclusion radically. I wanted to prove it. Therefore, I wanted to prove whether philosophical suicide is inside simulated absurd. So in this chapter, I tried to prove these two facts, which is faith, the excluded component of the absurd. There is no word called faith inside absurd. Faith is excluded, and also heaven. Heaven is also excluded. The concept of afterlife is completely taken out of absurd. So I have taken two novels, Have a Little Faith from Mitch Albom, Henry Covington. The title itself says what it is going to talk about, and also 5 People Who Meet in Heaven, Eddie. I'm so fortunate that these two writers have written all the elements that absurdism had. I did not go around libraries, I did not go around literatures, I do not go around from this end to that end, but I found everything in these two authors, and I'm so fortunate to study everything in these two authors. So Henry Covington, this is a real life story. This is Mitch Albom. The one in the blue shirt is Mitch Albom, and the one in the black one is Henry Covington, and this is a real life story. Therefore, this story gets more weightage. So again, the absurd ambience has to be there. They were living in a single room, 4 brothers and 3 sisters. They were sleeping in a single room. His father passed away, and Henry Covington chose to live in the life in the absurd. He was a drug dealer, and therefore he lived his way in the absurd. And while he was living in the absurd, he made a wonderful thing, which is he commits philosophical suicide. One day he kneels down and he says, "Jesus, please save me. If you save me, I will give my life to you." He commits perfect philosophical suicide. I was so excited because I wanted to find out what will happen when a person commits philosophical suicide, which Albert Camus does not ask him to do it. After 20 years, Mitch Albom meets him, and after 20 years, he was a pastor of a church called I Am My Brother's Keeper. This is the word that comes from Cain. Cain says, "Am I my brother's keeper?" And this guy answers, "I am my brother's keeper." And what he does is he is having a drug rehabilitation center. He was helping those people who was in drugs, and I have explained exponentially in the 4th chapter what he was doing, and I have 2 pages, but I don't want to talk about it that, but he was having a wonderful life. That means he was having some life. So I found out that philosophical suicide is inside the simulated absurd. So what is faith? Faith is a simulator. Faith is a simulator. You cannot find out whether it is true or false, or whether it is original or clone, whether it is real or unreal, whether it is logical or illogical. It is a simulator, and it is a hyper-real. Faith is a word which lives in the hyper-real realm, and just because it is in the hyper-real realm, it is inside my world, simulated absurd. So now I have to take on the final weapon, the heaven. Albert Camus completely rejects afterlife. He says that death is only reality. There is no continuation whatsoever to heaven. So I wanted to expound the concept of heaven, and I have taken the 5 people who meet in heaven, the character named Eddie. And Mitch Albom's concept of heaven and afterlife does not persuade you to put faith in the existence of heaven after death, but it explains your present status. What he's trying to say is heaven is not something that lies after death. It is something that lies just in your present, where you are seated right now. So Yeti was living in Ruby Pair, and he died on his 83rd birthday, which is on just in the 23rd page of the novel. So the novel has to end on the 23rd page, but the author pulls the character to the next level, which is in the heaven. Yeti finds out that Ruby Pair, he enters into heaven, and he finds out that Ruby Pair, where he was living, is the heaven. The blue man here, a person who was living there, he comes to explain that this is a place where absurd exists. The place where you are living is the heaven in disguise. He gives an explanation to the absurd ambience, the confrontation. He says that confrontation, that position is the heaven in disguise. And he also goes on to explain his existence, and he makes him to understand that there are two sides to the same story. And this blue man makes a startling statement that he killed him, and Yeti tells, no, I didn't kill anyone. And he explained an event. While he was a child, while they were playing in a playground, the ball came to the road. So Yeti went out and took the ball, and he came back. Yeti only knew this one fact, that he has taken the ball and he came back. And blue man now explains the next angle to the same story. So Yeti knows just one story. Now blue man says that I was driving the car while you were coming to the road. I tried to slam the brake, but the brake was not working. I died. So you have killed me. So there is two facts to the same absurd ambience. What I'm trying to say is, in your present position, there is another story that you do not know. So therefore, if you take up afterlife dimension into the present ambience, you will know that there is some other space is living. So afterlife concept also comes under simulated absurd. So simulated absurd realm is a big realm where it takes hold of absurd, life in the absurd, and absurd recurrence, ultimatum, faith, God, afterlife, and this is the simulated absurd life. The chapter 5 conclusion, I have summarized everything. I have expounded the title. I have started my thesis, my research, by expounding absurdism, which is a myth of Sisyphus. I have given a pure, objective way of approach to my thesis. I have steadily sticked on to the framework of absurdism. I have never deviated from it, and I have never given my own explanation from it. And I have taken everything and I have pounded it over these seven characters. And these 7 characters proved the thing that there is another level called simulated absurd. So Paul Auster's Fogg, Nash and Quinn, and Mitch Albom's Dorr, Sully, Henry and Eddie has upgraded absurdism to neo-absurdism. Neo-absurdism is the terminology that this research gives to absurdism, or to the findings that this research propagates. Neo-absurdism is a new world. So starting from the question, what is the meaning of life? It started from the question and it ends up, he says that life is in the absurd, but this research says that life is in the simulated absurd. The statement of conclusion that I have derived here corresponds to the facts, and when they are gathered together, they have coherence within itself. They do not have systematic contradiction within itself. The statement of conclusion which is produced did not disown itself by logical inconsistency. It is provided with ample of evidence and provision of facts to support its evidence. It is supported with proper constructs and valid evidences by citation, and it has coherence and correspondence to establish the truth. This research has provided this statement of conclusion with empirical evidence and relevance. Neo-absurdism is a place which includes everything, and this is the megacosm of the simulated absurd life. There are some drawbacks in my thesis. This thesis is just a prototype. There is a palamoli, a proverb in Tamil, oru pane sothukku oru pane sothu oru pane oru so oru So that word can be taken, it is just a prototype, it can be taken and be elongated into other thing. And another drawback that this thesis has is it is very linear. So if you want to understand this thesis, this work of art, you have to stand at the right position and see it. If you stand at the wrong position, it will be a chaos. So if this findings finds out to be something that is chaos, it means that you are standing at the wrong position looking at it. If you are finding yourself at the right position, you will have a beautiful picture. And of course, the findings are raw. It has to be developed. It has to be formulated into wonderful terminologies, and also the final findings that it is absurd. So for further studies, I have found out that this simulated absurd can be retraced, can be improvised, with external ideas and can be implemented in theoretical textbooks, and if it is possible. And also this ideology, if it is applied to the framework of deconstruction, the deconstruction gives a different phenomena. Through the lens of simulated absurd, deconstruction never deconstructs, but arcades as a paradigm that motivates creation. It will change deconstruction, and this thing can be applied to even historical ideologies, historical facts, and if these things is been inserted into historical perspectives, everything will be changed, and every post-structural paradigms will be new, and it will be creating new archetypes. This simulated absurd can also be explored under theology, and it will be democrating the nature to supernatural. Simulated absurd creates, mystifies, and it lives forever. Thanks for your patience listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shophet, Peter, and Benedsingh, for your presentation. Now I hand over the session to Dr. K. Reshmi, Associate Professor of English, Pondicherry University, Examiner of Viva.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. So, thank you, Shophet, for your very enthusiastic presentation.
Thank you,
your
ma'am.
presentation full of energy and strength. Okay, so now you have, so from your presentation and from your thesis, I have gathered that you have come forward with this new terminology. I think you have given that terminology, you have given that particular term,
Yes,
simulated absurd, right? That
Yes,
is the term
Yes,
which
ma'am.
you yourself
Yes, ma'am.
coined.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
This simulated, explain that idea of simulated absurd with reference to just one character in any one text you have selected, and explain how it is different from the absurd in myth of absurd as explained in the myth of Sisyphus. Just for the sake of participants, you can just explain that with reference to one particular character.
Okay.
The experience of simulated absurd.
In reference to, I want to take just a minute.
In a brief manner,
Okay,
you can
okay,
explain.
okay. Simulated absurd, when a character finds himself in a place called simulated absurd, he will be in a position where he will not be able to, or he will be able to manipulate the truth and also manipulate the false, or manipulate the original and also the clone. He will not be able to find out which one is real and which one is a copy, or which one is the representation of a copy. So when a character moves into this realm, he will be exhibiting some nature that will be against his paradoxical thinking, against his logical interpretation. So his logical interpretation will say that this is right, but just because he is living in that realm, he will be able to tackle it in a different way. So coming into the absurd ambience, which is the confrontation, whenever a person is staying there in absurd ambience, he will not be able to, he will be able to take it in a different way and positive way and move it into the next phenomenon, which is the simulated way of life. So if I want to insert into a character, I want to talk about the character called Dor, which I haven't mentioned here. The character named Dor, what he does is, this character, after coming out of the eternal punishment, he takes a person called Sarah, who wants to die. She wants to die, and Victor is another character who doesn't want to die. He's the 14th richest man, and this girl has no love affair and he wants to die. So Dor comes out and he expounds the ideology that both are beautiful, which is Sarah wants to die and that thing also beautiful, and that man doesn't want to die, that thing also beautiful. This simulated absurd life were able to see the greenery in the desert. The simulated absurd life are able to find out newness in the oldness. So it is a new format or a new way of life, or it is the way of life that we were living but not given a terminology. So this could be taken as something like a terminology.
Okay. Then, apart from these two authors you have selected, can you identify any other author or text to whom you can apply this terminology of simulated absurd?
Yeah, I haven't taken that effort. I have particularly stayed inside this paradigm, and which I have mentioned it as a drawback, which I have taken as a prototype, and I am very much satisfied by staying inside it, and I have never taken it out, and I hope that I will do it in the future, for sure.
Okay. And then, which genre do you find better to explain this philosophy of this absurd or simulated absurd? Novel or drama?
Absolutely, I go with novel because I fell in love with Albert Camus' way of exposition in his Outsider novel called Outsider, and also I love novel, so I will always go with novel. I think the novel has some big paradigm to exhibit the freeness of simulated absurd life, and the parameters of drama is little bit limited, I think.
Okay. So, another question, see, this theory of existentialism, this absurdity, all that developed during the time when the world was visited with a lot of problems and people were frustrated, etc. Do you think that this idea of simulated absurd or finding a ray of hope in this chaos, this is also part of the contemporary milieu or our immediate context?
Okay, most of the authors who have already dealt with absurd, they have said that this thing came to conclusion in the year 1969, and absurd drama was closed because everyone started to move to the next phenomena, and you cannot even revive. It is like the term absurd can be referred to like metaphysical term. It is like old, and it is in the museum. You cannot bring it back. But I found out that I have mentioned it in the introductory chapter. I found out that some flavor is left in absurdism, and I found out that it is just a spark. It has to be magnified. It has to be exhibited. And Albert Camus ended his writing with the spark of life and with a little closure. But I hope that this thesis will open up Albert Camus into a different paradigm. And it is absolutely relevant in our arena, which is where we are living now. And this, even the mode where we are doing this PhD Viva also is perfectly explicating hyperreal.
Okay. So next one question I want to ask from the other external examiner.
Okay, ma'am.
That is, see, that examiner has pointed out that some sentences which have used in the thesis, like I'll just read it. It has unflinchingly found God in the no God theory. It has formulated and has promulgated the rise of the new wonder in the realm of the absurd, etc. And this examiner feels that these are a bit a kind of overstatement.
Okay.
So how do you respond to that? Because what the examiner, from his report, what he states is that this absurdism and absurdity and existentialism, all these were developed over a period of time by many theorists. And in this case, okay, you have found a new strain in that. Okay, but when you make statements like you have found God in no God theory, and after all, God itself is an abstract concept, and how can you make such strong statements? That is the question he has asked.
Okay.
And just respond to that. How do you respond to that?
Okay. From the initiation of my thesis to my end point, I have been tried to do it in an objective way, and it is absolutely, I have no subjective ideology inside my thesis. And I have perfectly taken the contemporary characters and placed it inside Albert Camus without having any prejudice, without having any backdrop ideology. I placed it and tried to write the results. So when I found out the results, I automatically found that there was a conflict, and I never thought that I will end up like this. And also, as I said, it is a linear way, and I'm very fortunate that these 7 characters explain every element of Albert Camus, because Albert Camus says philosophical suicide, I found it in Mitch Albom. Albert Camus says suicide, also I found it in Mitch Albom. And Albert Camus says absurd way of living, and I found it in an author. So I was so fortunate to have this thing, and I was so fortunate to find out and furnish my thesis within the paradigm of 2 authors. So I came to that conclusion. I just used that word in my 5th chapter, which is after 200 and odd pages. I said in my 5th chapter, first line, I have unflinchingly found God in a no God theory, because I was so fortunate and happy that I found that conclusion. And this cannot be applied in every other scenario or every other author. It may differ, and because every person has the power to disagree, and I cannot validate the answer that another person will get when he researches on some other theory. And I'm not saying that every God theory or everyone will end up in God, but this simulated absurd, this finding simulated absurd, just because of the entry of the simulated absurd has upgraded into another level, upgraded it himself to the next level.
Okay, Shophet. That's all my questions, and now the thesis is open for discussion.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much, madam.
Vasuhi ma'am, you can just
Good
say
evening,
some.
ma'am.
Good evening. How are you, ma'am?
Yes, I'm fine, ma'am. How are you?
Yeah, fine. So you can ask him something or
Okay. So, Shophet, you were talking about absurd literature to the next, taking absurd literature to the next level by stimulation, right?
Yes, ma'am.
What is that positive thing that you get from this absurd literature?
Okay. I have found the merging of the physical and the spiritual world, because automatically whenever something beyond logical interpretation comes, we reject it because it is simply illogical. We say it doesn't have empirical evidence. We say that it is something different. The mysticism and the physical material has the ability to correlate and has the ability to merge and birth something wonderful. So I think it is time for us to merge the ideologies which is there, which we can see with our eyes and also which we cannot see with our eyes. The merging of the natural and the supernatural, I found out to be one of the major strike point of this research.
You mean to say that giving a scientific explanation?
Of course, I believe that a scientific explanation is possible. Scientific ideology is not against the presence of the unknown or cannot be seen ideologies, and they have tried to prove it in every ideology, because now the term called quantum has become very famous. Recently I read an article about quantum hologram inside a person's being. There is a coherence between a heart and mind. They have simulated something like that. So the quantum ideology is started to boom in the arena of science, and I hope that a day is coming when literature and physics and botany will merge together and find out something different and beautiful. We are going to go beyond our disciplinary line, and we are going to find something great. I hope that days are coming.
You mean to say you want to concretize abstract ideas, and so that people will accept all those things?
Absolutely. They will be able to come out with something different or phenomenal and find out a new way of life.
I can give some examples from your from your works.
Okay.
One example, how that has helped him.
One example. Okay, I'll take Sully. Sully is a character who does not believe, Sully, the first phone call from heaven, and he's a character who does not believe in the presence of the supernatural or mystical. And Mitch Albom perfectly plays him that he is not a believer of mystical elements. So whenever the phone call that comes from heaven, whenever someone says to him, he will freak out and he will slap them and he will blast them out. But he tries to find out what is behind it, and he found out that it is a simulation. It is someone named Horace was simulating that thing. So what Horace was doing is he was taking the phone calls from everyone, and he made it into a system where he can align every word. So therefore, when he types "hello sister," that voice will come out as "hello sister." So that was he was simulating. And when the moment he really got the phone call from his wife, that wife came out and she explained, don't stop your imagination, go beyond your ability to imagine. There were some pages which was so beautiful in the last pages of the novel. I think that this merge is absolutely necessary, so that it could help our real existence, because the presence of the afterlife will not change my afterlife death, because I don't know what is going to happen after my death, but that concept today can help my existence today. I'll be happy that something around is happening to me. Some other story is there which I don't know, but I believe that something is happening. That is the another side of the same story which I have explained. So those things will be so beautiful.
So, nice presentation and very good work that you have done.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Audience, participants, if you have any questions, you can post it in the chat box too. Or you can unmute yourself and ask questions. Not just questions, you can make observations. Yeah, one last question. What made you choose this topic?
It was really an accident that I came over this topic. Actually, as my thesis, I wanted to create something like I had it in my mind like eternalism, and I wanted to create that thing as my thesis. And I went to my guide, and my guide told me, no, it is not like that. So the guide told me that do something like meaningless. I never heard the term, so that word meaningless was pondering in my mind. So I went back and searched some books, and I'm really fortunate to fall over Paul Auster and Mitch Albom. I was just taking Paul Auster at once and Mitch Albom at once, and never knowing that it was there. And one fortunate thing is, when I was registering, I never knew about Albert Camus. I have no ideology about Albert Camus. Just after my search, I found out Albert Camus, and finally I'm here. So it was really a fortunate event.
Pardon?
Ma'am, there are questions. Can you go to the...
We can conclude it.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So Peter, I'm Shophet Peter. In fact, I'm very happy about your thesis and presentation. Because what I'm happy about is, of course, I have certain differences with the way you have worked out, but whatever it is, your thesis, you have taken the full interest and involvement in it. And a researcher should actually should accept or should not go with whatever is generally given, and he or she should try to be inquisitive and curious and delve deep into things and find something new. That effort you have taken. So that shows you have real research interest, and that is a very happy thing, very good thing. And another thing is, you have presented very clearly, very effectively, and that is also a very important thing for a teacher and for a researcher. So, and the way you have written your thesis, your language also shows your clarity and also confidence in the area. Of course, you have taken effort to understand quite difficult things with a lot of clarity, because these are not very easy ideas to understand. These are just like stories where characters go here or there. It's quite tough, and you have taken effort to understand this complicated area. In fact, I am really happy about all these things. And that is, the other examiner has also given positive report, and based on the reports and based on your presentation and with the concurrence of everybody here, I recommend you for the award of doctoral degree in English, and so hereafter you can address yourself as, call yourself as Dr. Shophet Peter. Yeah, I also congratulate your guide and your co-guide for encouraging you to reach this level. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Hearty congratulations, Dr. Shophet Peter Benedsingh. I deeply appreciate your deep commitment and dedication you put forth each and every day to write your scholarly thesis. It's just because of your incredible diligence you are being able to add one more feather to your cap, your doctoral degree. I offer my hearty congratulations on your academic success, the culmination of many years of dedication and hard work. We are all proud of your achievement. My very best wishes for your personal and professional success. Now I request the Joint Supervisor, Vice Principal and Head Department of English, St. John's College, Dr. Jeya Sundara, to offer his felicitation. Dr. Jeya Sundara, please.
I must take this moment to congratulate my colleague and my dear candidate, Shophet, now who is Dr. Shophet, and also his guide, Dr. Swarnalatha ma'am, and he was comfortably at ease with working with us, and he was taking on in a different perspective, in a different direction. And I was very happy that he had taken to this absurdist perspective, and I know that Shophet could handle everything quite comfortably, and he would come off quite successfully. But while working on the thesis, I was able to find him a research, and all such things, and all running together each other, and then I said, you are a researcher, you are a Guyana, but anyway, every challenging days and a very challenging area, concept, taken it quite comfortably, and the presentation was also vibrant, there was realizing it, so I take this moment to congratulate Shophet, and may the good Lord bless him, and very best in his life. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Reshmi ma'am, for spending your valuable time.
Thank you.
I think now the candidate can
Okay. Now I request Dr. Shophet Benedsingh to give vote of thanks.
My joy knows no bounds today, and I become a complete man today. My heart is filled with gratitude and thankfulness. I am greatly obliged to my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, who has kept enthusing me to reach great heights and achieve more. I thank my Comforter, Holy Spirit, for giving me wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, strength, and ability, and health to stand before you today. It is all because of His grace and mercies that I will be able to start my thesis. I was able to start my thesis and complete it. And I'm so very fortunate and blessed to have 65 years of expertise together from my guide and co-guide. I render my heartfelt sincere thanks to my research supervisor, Dr. Swarnalatha Joseph, Principal Retired, Government Arts and Science College, Palyamkottai, Coimbatore. Her expert advice, encouragement, guidance, inspirations, and suggestions has promoted me in my quest for knowledge. I'm really grateful, ma'am, for your instructions and help, and I have wonderful interactions with you, ma'am, which I can never forget. And I record my deepest gratitude and thanks to my joint supervisor, Dr. Jeya Sundara sir, Vice Principal, Head of the Department of St. John's College, Palyamkottai. He is my teacher, my mentor, my well-wisher. His subject expertise has enthralled me really, and his observations and interpretations has helped me to widen the scope of my research. And the continuation of my thesis was really because of him. Because I already told you that I was finding a conflict and I was not able to find out the answer. And one day I was entering my department, and sir was standing with the book and his eyes was blooming. And I moved over and I came back, and again he was like he was in his world and he was reading, because he's a voracious reader and he was reading. And again I went out and again I went in, and he was again having that experience. And suddenly, without any warning, he turned towards me and showed that book. Do you know about the simulation and simulacra? Look at this word, look at this word. He said simulation and simulacra, and he told this word, and he said hyperreal, and he walked off. That just gave my eureka moment, and I finished my thesis just because of him. I had wonderful interactions with him. I really thank you, sir, for your constant coachings and corrections that you have done. And with your great love, you have molded me as a researcher, and I'm greatly indebted to you, sir. And I'm really honored and delighted to inform the gathering that my school teachers are here. And I have invited my 5th standard teacher, Satrak sir, and my 7th standard and my 8th standard teacher, Daisy ma'am, and ma'am is here. And my 9th standard teacher, Sarah ma'am, is here. And my 10th standard teacher, Rubavati ma'am, is here. Deepa ma'am is here. And my 11th standard and 12th standard teacher, ma'am Sherin ma'am, is here. And really blessed and proud to be a student. And my college teachers are here. My guide and my wonderful well-wisher, Edward sir, is here. He is here with me in my home. He wanted to be here. And really, I'm very thankful to Edward sir, because without him, I would have never entered into literature arena, because I was having another passion and having another desire, and I was going after that. And without any warning, he pulled me and called me once, and called me to be a ad hoc teacher. And today I stand here before you. It is every credit goes to Edward sir. I really thank you, sir, for your presence in my life. And my colleagues and my teachers are here. Benedsingh sir, and Nalina Pauline madam is here. K. Vigila madam is here. Dr. Hayes is here, and my teacher Dr. Pinky ma'am is here. Sophia ma'am is here. Sindhija madam is here. They have all guided me and helped me in all my pursuit. And I have also invited my principals, R.K. Jacob sir. I hope that sir is here. And Ida ma'am, and Marekmar sir, and Arul Devadas sir. And thanks for your presence, and thanks for your input in my life. I have cherished every moment with you all, and I have found out, and I think that this is the best academic forum that I will get in my life, to say thank you to everyone who has impacted my life. And I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to my friends, my colleagues who have motivated me, encouraged me in all possible ways to achieve in my pursuit. My special thanks goes to Dr. V. Satish, sir, my teacher and my friend, who has helped me in multitudinous ways with great precision to finalize my thesis. And his help in my thesis is tremendous, and I'm really indebted to you, sir. And I'm really thankful to Dr. U. Kethrapal, whose constant support and encouraging words that has always pulled me forward. His fast forward thinking has always paved the way. I used to sit like it, but he will always motivate me. He will think just 4 steps before me. He'll be dragging me, and I'm so thankful for you, sir. And I thank my friend Christopher Jacob, whose untiring help and booming words are always my constant support. I'm fortunate to have friendship with you, Christopher, and it will be continued. And my special thanks go to my teacher and my guide, Dr. Kingsley, sir, whose motivation and provocative thoughts always helped me to trim my ways and correct my ways. And he used to give so many philosophical explanations, and I really love his the interaction that I have with him. And my ceaseless thanks goes to Samuel, sir, whose inspiring words are always fiery and productive. You are my constant support. Thank you, sir. And my special thanks goes to Professor Robin, and who is always with me, who always supports me, who always strengthens the way that I go. And also my special thanks goes to Professor Jude, who always accompany me in every way that I go on. And this thesis is impossible without my family, my relatives, my friends, and also I thank my student friends. I thank my student friends who are here. I have given you the invitation and you have accepted and came all the way and stayed up to now. And thanks for all the inspiring words that they have given to me. I love my students. I teach my heart to my students. I allowed to be a teacher and thankful for that. And I really thank my family, my relatives, especially my father, Reverend Dr. Frederick Satya Samuel, and my mother, Reverend Mrs. Susie Frederick. They stood by me at all times. As I already told you that I have done 13 schools in 12, for up to 12th I did 13 schools. It was a horrible time for my family because my father was the sole breadwinner, and we had a great time to meet the both ends. We had tremendous backslides, but God was with us, and I'm so fortunate to stand before my father and mother as a proud son. I'm a proud son, Daddy, and I have made you proud. I have made you proud, Mummy. I love you so much. Thanks for everything that you have done in my life. And my heart goes out to my brother, engineer Sosipet Stephen Abraham, and his wife Sheila. And my brother is I'm so glad and fortunate to have my brother who always stands behind me, stands with me. His encouraging words has always motivated me. There were so many times that as I was down, and my brother was my support. I think that we had no fight between us. Like for more than 20 years, we have never fought. And that was a wonderful relationship that I have with my brother. I always pour my heart with my brother. I love my brother. Thank you so much, Stephen, for all your constant support. And on the day of my registration, I was traveling back and I came near New Bus Stand, and I was thinking, at the time of my Viva, I'll be married. And that thought was flashing in my brain and my eyes were sparkling. But I never thought that I will have 2 kids on the day of my Viva. I submitted my thesis on September 2020, and my friend asked me, what is the time between submission and Viva? I said, a baby was conceived and born, and she was 4 months old. I had a long gap between my submission, and I'm so thankful for my wife, Gracia, Mrs. Annie Gracia Shophet, whose inexorable love and unremitting care and support has always been with me. You are so loving and cheering. And you have been with me. You have been my white flag and red flag and blue flag and green flag. Thank you so much for being with me and putting up with me. And also I thank my my daughter Hadassah Berit and my second daughter Estina Shafira. They have given meaning to me. They have defined me. They have molded me. They have said that what you are doing is wrong, and they have stripped myself and made me humble. I'm very much thankful for my daughters, and I thank everyone who has taken time to come here to witness my thesis, to accept my invitation. And special thanks goes to Kavita ma'am, who was with me all the while, and she helped me in everything, and her comforting words were always with me. And I'm thankful for Jnanabas, who was with me right now, and John Jayakumar, and Gibson, and Sadish sir, and everyone who are here with me in this presentation. And a special thanks goes to my principal, who have been constant support to me. He always he was always showering love and concern over me. And also I thank my department friends and other department friends who have come here and stayed here with me, and the non-teaching staff friends who have been with me, so passionate about it. Thank you so much for your presence here. And you have made my day to be a bigger one. You have expounded me. You have made me something good. Thank you so much. Thanks for your patience listening, and I cherish every moment. Thank you everyone. Thanks.
So God bless you, Shophet.
Thank you so much, sir.
I once again thank each and every one of you for making this Viva Voce a great success. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Reshmi ma'am, it was nice meeting you after a long time. Thank you ma'am for joining.
Okay, thank you.
Reshmi ma'am, shall we wind the meeting?
Sure. You can wind up.
Yes, please. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
unanimous leaves.